San Francisco was still that day, almost too still. The kind of eerie calm that wraps around the city like fog before a storm. People walked a little faster, shadows stretched longer in the golden afternoon light, and deep down in the heart of the city, something was about to explode. Dear listeners, before we move forward, please subscribe my channel to hit 1,000 figure. A bank had just been robbed in broad daylight. The suspect wasn't subtle. He stormed in, guns blazing, took the cash, and left a trail of chaos behind. But it wasn't the robbery itself that had everyone on edge. It was who would respond to it. The name echoed through the police radio like a whispered legend. Harry Callahan, better known on the streets as Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry wasn't your average cop. He didn't wait for backup. He didn't file paperwork before pulling the trigger. If there was a line between justice and vengeance, Harry blurred it every single day. And in his hand, always, was the legendary .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world. As the call crackled through the dispatch, "Suspect is armed, possibly wounded. Hostages released. He's headed toward Market Street." Harry didn't speak. He didn't need to. He holstered the Magnum, stepped into his car, a battered Ford Galaxy, and drove toward danger like it owed him money. Downtown, the suspect was panicking. The crowd had scattered. Sirens were distant but growing louder. In desperation, he grabbed a nearby waitress from a diner, pulling her close, pressing the barrel of his gun to her head. But before he could shout his demands, the crowd parted. And Harry Callahan stepped into the open street. Alone, no backup, no shield. Just the wind tugging at his coat, and the weight of justice resting calmly in his holster. He stared the man down like he'd done 100 times before, but this time, everything would change. The tension on that San Francisco street was thick enough to cut with a knife. A crowd had gathered, not by choice, but out of fear. Shopkeepers hid behind windows, a mother pulled her child behind a parked car, and waitstaff from the diner where the gunman had taken cover were frozen in place, too scared to run, too shocked to scream, and there he was, Harry Callahan, standing alone in the street like some grim reaper in a brown coat. His eyes were locked on the suspect, and his right hand hovered near the holster like it had a mind of its own. The .44 Magnum wasn't just a weapon. It was a promise. The robber was already bleeding, a shoulder wound from his reckless escape. His eyes darted from Harry to the woman he held hostage, then to the gun in his own trembling hand. He was desperate, and Dirty Harry could smell desperation from a mile away. Then it happened. In one smooth motion, Harry drew the Magnum. The polished barrel caught a streak of sunlight as if it were forged from fire itself, and fired. The hostage fell to the ground, unharmed. The robber stumbled back, hit in the leg. He dropped the woman and hit the pavement with a scream, his weapon flying from his grip. Chaos erupted. People ducked. Someone screamed, but Harry didn't move an inch. He walked forward, calm as a preacher at a funeral, Magnum still trained on the bleeding man. And then he spoke, not with anger, not even with excitement, but with chilling calm, the kind that made your blood run cold. "I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kinda lost track myself." The robber stared up, panting, eyes wide like he was looking into the eyes of death itself. Sweat mixed with blood on his brow. His hand inched toward the dropped pistol. Harry didn't flinch. But being this is a .44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off You've got to ask yourself one question. A pause. The street was silent. The only sound the soft breeze rustling through the flags overhead. Do I feel lucky? Harry took one more slow step forward, standing over the criminal like a judgment passed down by fate itself. Well, do you, punk? The suspect froze. Time itself seemed to stop. His fingers hovered in midair just inches from the cold steel of the fallen gun. And then he surrendered, hands in the air, face down. The punk didn't feel lucky, and he sure as hell didn't feel brave anymore. As the punk dropped to the ground, surrendering what little pride he had left, the street remained frozen, as if time itself was holding its breath. No one dared move until Harry slowly lowered the magnum, its long barrel still warm from the shot that changed the tone of the entire city. The waitress, shaken but unharmed, was helped to her feet by a bystander. Her hands trembled as she glanced at Harry, the man who'd saved her life with nerves of steel and a voice as cold as winter. The crowd that had once cowered in fear began to rise, peeking over car hoods and behind trash bins, their eyes wide with disbelief. Some clapped, others just stared, but everyone knew they'd witnessed something legendary. A few beats later, the first police car screeched to a stop at the curb. Too late. 2 officers jumped out, guns drawn, but quickly realized they were no longer needed. One of them looked at the suspect on the ground, the pool of blood, and then at Harry, standing over him like a ghost carved from stone. Callahan. Jesus, one of them muttered. Harry said nothing. He simply holstered the magnum with the same grace and silence he'd drawn it with. No celebration, no adrenaline-fueled outburst. Just a tired sigh, like a man who had seen too much and felt too little. A young journalist pushed through the crowd, camera in hand. Detective Callahan, that was incredible. Did you really not know how many shots you fired? Harry turned to him slowly, eyes shaded beneath his brow. Did it matter? The reporter froze, the microphone suddenly feeling too small in his hand. Harry turned back toward the squad car and opened the door. Someone in the crowd muttered almost reverently, "That guy's not a cop. He's something else." And that's how legends are born. Before Harry pulled away, he glanced in the rearview mirror. The punk was being cuffed and read his rights, trembling like a man who'd just stared into the abyss. Harry didn't blink. As the car pulled into traffic, the sun dipped just below the skyline, casting long shadows down Market Street. And at the center of it all was the myth of Dirty Harry, now immortal. The incident on Market Street didn't just make the news, it became the news. By the time the evening sun had disappeared completely, Harry Callahan's name was flashing across headlines in every paper, whispered in every diner, and debated across every radio show from San Francisco to Sacramento. Rogue cop saves hostage. Votohor magnum justice. Dirty Harry, hero or hazard? The footage, caught by a nearby security camera, played in slow motion across television screens. The moment Harry raised that gun, the blast, the suspect falling, and then that line. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? The public, they ate it up. In a city sick of crime, corruption, and red tape, Harry Callahan was a breath of brutal, unfiltered justice. But inside the police department, it wasn't all applause. A disciplinary board was called. They questioned his reckless endangerment, his use of force, and of course, that final line, which, they said, sounded provocative. Harry sat in the room, staring out the window while suited men debated his actions like lawyers fighting over chess pieces. When finally asked to justify what he'd done, He turned to them with that same tired glare and said, "I saved a life. I stopped a killer. If that's a problem, maybe I'm not the one out of line." Silence. The board cleared him. Barely. But they made it clear. Next time, follow the rules. Harry nodded. He knew the rules. He just didn't trust them to save lives. Meanwhile, on the streets, he'd become something of a ghost story told among criminals. Don't try anything funny downtown. Dirty Harry's out there. He carries that magnum like it's made of God's fury. Even the officers walking the beat started to quote him under their breath. That one-liner, raw, dangerous, and delivered like a death sentence, had taken on a life of its own. But Harry didn't care about fame. He didn't sign autographs, didn't give interviews, didn't replay the tape. He just sat alone some nights in a dark apartment, reloading the magnum with the same quiet ritual as a priest, counting prayer beads. Because for Harry, it was never about being a hero. It was about balance. One man trying to tip the scales of justice in a world that kept tilting the other way. Years passed. The city of San Francisco changed. Buildings grew taller, the streets busier, the sirens more frequent. Crime evolved, uniforms changed, radios got smarter. But somewhere in the noise, one story refused to fade. People still whispered about that day on Market Street. Not because of the robbery, not because of the suspect, but because of the man who ended it. The cop with steel in his eyes and justice in his holster. Harry Callahan. Even new recruits at the police academy were told the tale during orientation. Not officially, of course. It was too unorthodox for the rule book. But around the lockers and late-night stakeouts, everyone knew it by heart. I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? That line, that single, searing line, had outlived the case files, the news cycles, and even the punk who'd been arrested. It became part of the city's folklore, etched in concrete, carried by the wind. Tourists visited that street and asked, "Is this where Dirty Harry said it?" Guides would nod, smile, and say, "Right here. Just Harry, his gun, and that punk." And yet, Harry himself was nowhere to be found. He retired quietly, no parade, no farewell speech. Just handed in his badge and walked off into the kind of sunset only a man like him deserved. Silent, solitary, and a little bit tired. Some say he moved north, bought a cabin in the hills. Others swear he still roams the city at night, watching, waiting, just in case someone gets cocky enough to test their luck. But here's the truth. Dirty Harry wasn't just a man. He was a warning, a shadow of justice that reminded the world, sometimes you don't need permission to do what's right. Sometimes you need a .44 Magnum and a question that stops time. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?